The organizational structure of Hamas is built to survive. It operates as a decentralized, self-healing network. If Israeli intelligence eliminates a senior commander in Gaza, a replacement steps into the role within hours. Because of this built-in redundancy, the men who actually keep the organization running, the financial architects and weapons logisticians, feel entirely secure. They live openly in friendly foreign capitals across Turkey, Qatar, and Malaysia, managing shell companies and moving millions of dollars every month. This diagram shows the exact problem with targeting individuals. If you strike an isolated node, the surrounding network will immediately regrow its connections to bypass the damage. To permanently disrupt the flow of money and weapons, you have to collapse the entire foundation at the exact same time. After 11 months of mapping communications, Mossad analysts found an anomaly in the schedule. Thanks to a mix of financial summits, weapons procurement meetings, and routine medical visits, 40 key logistical leaders were going to be exposed across 5 different countries, all within the exact same 2-day window. The directive handed down in Tel Aviv was absolute. The operations teams were ordered to orchestrate 40 independent eliminations during this specific window without alerting the broader network. This required absolute synchronization. If a single target suspects they are being hunted, the network adapts. The remaining leaders go underground, and the opportunity vanishes. They had exactly 48 hours to execute. Meticulous planning immediately meets the friction of reality. In Beirut, operatives place a magnetic explosive under his Mercedes, expecting the Hamas financier to drive to his morning meeting. Instead, the weather is nice, and he decides to walk. The team is forced to adapt instantly. As the target walks down a crowded street, a motorcycle cuts him off. Operatives pull him into an unmarked medical van, chemically sedate him, and drive away in the span of 7 seconds. At that exact moment, over 300 miles away in Cairo, another operation is already in motion. A 56-year-old Hamas leader arrives at a private clinic for a routine checkup. His usual doctor has been paid a massive sum to leave the country and hand his coat over to an Israeli operative. The operative checks the target's vitals, then administers a fast-acting injection specifically designed to mimic a fatal heart attack. In a windowless control room in Tel Aviv, analysts track the overlapping operations on live feeds. As targets are successfully neutralized, their markers on the board flip from red to green. Keeping the timeline intact requires extreme on-the-ground improvisations from independent teams, making split-second decisions across multiple time zones. A daylight kidnapping gets noticed. To prevent the rest of the network from panicking and going dark, the vast majority of these eliminations have to look like tragic, untraceable accidents. 7 Hamas financial operatives gather in a luxury hotel in Doha to coordinate funding for West Bank operations. They have no idea that the local Qatari security guards patrolling their floor were replaced weeks ago by Israeli intelligence. A technician drops a small pressurized canister into the ventilation system above their conference room. It releases an odorless gas that perfectly mimics carbon monoxide poisoning. By the time emergency services arrive, the 7 men are dead, and the canister itself has dissolved entirely, leaving no chemical signature behind. Meanwhile, in Istanbul, 3 operatives meet with Syrian intermediaries to secure a shipment of Russian anti-tank missiles. The buyers chose a massive concrete warehouse because the thick walls and lack of windows offered maximum privacy. Israeli operatives hack the electronic locks to seal the doors from the outside, then activate industrial heating elements embedded in the walls. They artificially raise the temperature to lethal levels, suffocating the men inside. These elaborate setups sever vital pipelines. Money stops transferring, and heavy weapons stay locked in Syrian storage. Because the local authorities file reports blaming faulty air conditioning and broken heaters, the broader Hamas network never triggers its defensive alarms. But the execution is rarely flawless. In Sudan, local police set up a random traffic checkpoint right where the strike team planned to eliminate a mid-level coordinator. Forced to abort the primary plan as the clock ticks down, the team drains for target's brake fluid and replaces it with a visually identical compound that degrades under intense heat. During his morning commute, the target's brakes fail entirely at a busy intersection, and a commercial truck hits his door at 60 kilometers an hour. By the second night, the Tel Aviv board is mostly green. But an operation in Hamburg reveals raw elimination isn't always the primary objective. The target here runs European digital operations. He is highly capable. relying on an air-gapped laptop that is physically disconnected from the internet, rendering it immune to standard remote hacking. This 3D diagram shows how intelligence bypasses physical security. A delivery driver drops off a pizza. Hidden in the cardboard base is a flat receiver device. It bridges that air gap through physical proximity, capturing every keystroke and screen image as the target works. Over 6 hours, Mossad siphons 200 gigabytes of data detailing bank accounts and operation targets. They intentionally leave the hacker alive. By letting him operate a compromised machine, they gather the exact data they need to map the next iteration of his network. The final hours become a sprint as the 48-hour window closes. Operatives are forced to execute highly exotic eliminations across overlapping time zones. A coordinator in Turkey brushes his teeth with a tube spiked with a slow-acting toxin that causes total organ failure 14 days later. In Berlin, a health inspector places a microscopic biological agent on a restaurant cutting board, engineered specifically to attack the rare genetic profile of the owner. Back in Tel Aviv, the final target is marked green. The window closes. The operatives working across the globe immediately dissolve their identities, abandon their temporary safe houses, and completely disappear. Hamas leadership wakes up to a terrifying reality. Financial transfers stall, weapon shipments stop arriving at the border, and senior logisticians simply stop answering their phones. They are crippled, with no visible attack to point a finger at. Local police forces process the car crashes, heart attacks, and suffocations as individual tragedies. But global intelligence agencies look at the raw data and study the extreme algorithmic targeting required to pull this off across 5 sovereign nations. 40 lives erased in a single weekend without a shot being fired in public. It leaves a heavy question for international law. When state machinery becomes this surgically precise, where do you draw the line between national security and unaccountable execution?